Good morning, everybody. Oh, we got it. Good morning, everybody. My name is Angela, and I am a first-year PhD student at the University of Iowa in Kathryn Dalton's lab in the Department of Occupational and Environmental Health. My first, like you can tell that I'm a little bit older, right? Like I came back to do my PhD in my 40s, and my first career was as a park ranger out west all over the place. And my second career was doing public health in my native state of Arizona. And now I wanted to combine them and do environmental health. So I'm here at the University of Iowa for about the next 4 years. And I'm very excited to work with tick-borne disease and kind of preventing tick-borne disease among people who work outdoors. So without further ado, I will go ahead and jump into the presentation. We're going to talk today about tick-borne disease in Iowa, specifically how to prevent Lyme disease and the other stuff that ticks spread. There's lots and lots of diseases that ticks could spread, but Lyme disease is probably the biggest impact one. The most people get it. And that tends to be the one that can be pretty serious as well. So let's see, how do I advance my slide? Doesn't seem to be working.
And say spacebar arrow.
There we go.
There
There
you
we
are.
go. It's just a little delayed. Okay, so this is basically the map of what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the 3 life stages of ticks because that actually matters in prevention. Like you can actually kind of figure out when you might be at risk based on what time of year it is and what stage of tick you are seeing on your skin. We're going to talk a little bit about questing. It's not just for video games. It is actually a tick behavior. We're going to talk a little bit about how to avoid risky places, like what are risky places, and then we're going to talk about the CDC recommended prevention materials. So that is all we're gonna, and then there'll be a nice time at the end where you can do a question asking. You can tell me, well, I heard this or I heard this. Is it true? We're going to do a Mythbusters session, so go ahead and do that. All right, so life cycles of ticks. You guys ready for this? There are 4 different stages that a tick passes through. First, you start at the egg, right? And then you hatch from the egg and you're a larva. And then you molt and you go into a nymph. And then from a nymph, you go into an adult. And we're going to talk about each of those. So that is a larva. Can you all see it? Anybody point it out? It's tiny, right? And it's right in the middle of your screen. It's tiny. Like that literally looks like a speck of dust. So if you have a larva on you, you're unlikely to know that you actually have one or have been exposed, but you're also kind of unlikely to have larvae on you unless you really just kind of get into a very specific place accidentally. Larvae tend to go for smaller animals. They tend to want to find a blood meal. So for each stage to advance, they need a blood meal. So this larva is going to look for this little guy, the white-footed mouse, and he is all over the place. They are literally common everywhere here in the Midwest. So these guys carry Lyme disease and a lot of diseases. And so a larva will find a mouse, it'll latch on, it'll take its blood meal, and then it will get Lyme disease from the mouse. All right, so, and then what happens? This is a gross photo. Did I tell you we're going to talk about aliens today? This is ticks molting. So number 1 is the tick has just finished a blood meal, and you can tell it is a larva because it has how many legs? 3. The second photo is then kind of the tick blowing up. Number 3 is all of the gross alien stuff happening. And then 4, you can see that this tick emerging has 4 legs. And that next set of legs is going to be used for questing, which we'll talk about. So ticks are actually arachnids. They do have 4 sets of legs. All right, so once we molt from a larva to a nymph, this is the size of a nymph. It's about the size of a poppy seed. And you could see how it would easily go missed if you were looking for it. It could look just like, oh, I have a new little mark on my skin, or I have a freckle. So just be observant when you're doing your tick checks. They are really small. Nymphs are actually the most dangerous. Like they're actually more likely, there's more of them, first of all, and they're more likely to be infected by the primary host, usually that mouse. So they are likely to carry Lyme disease. They're much smaller, so we don't notice when they attach to us. You won't feel it. It doesn't hurt. we can see and remove the larger adults because they're more prominent, right? But this is so small that it may just appear as a small itchy bump, and you may not think about it. So one of the big things we say is like when the nymphs are out, which is generally from like May to June, that's when you have to be especially tick aware because you may not see the tick you're getting bitten by. So, all right. So now that we have graduated from nymph, you found your blood meal, you're going to go on to questing. Questing is literally when ticks climb up blades of grass and they start waving their limbs around, just hoping that something passes by and it grabs onto their fur, their clothing, and then it'll climb onto them and it'll find a suitable place to attach. So questing behavior is also really important and a good way to predict when a tick might be out looking for a blood meal. So questing typically happens when it's humid and when it's not too hot, but warmer than say like 50 degrees. So we're going to talk a little bit about that later. But those second and third hosts, first, remember, first was little mouse. Second and third hosts for the nymph stage and the adult stage tends to be humans and deer. So we're really good at moving around in the environment, right? Deer are as well. So if you have kind of a cluster of a bunch of nymphs and they hook onto a deer and then the deer go bounding elsewhere, the deer can actually spread Lyme disease. So that's one of the main transference pathways that kind of that Lyme disease happens in, which is why it's so easy to spread. But we tend, like I said, we tend to get nymphs and adults on us as humans. Those larvae tend to be too small. Okay, that's the life cycle. Then it begins again. Any questions before we move on to the next section? In the chat, check it real quick.
And we don't have any current questions in the chat.
Okay, great.
I do have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Take them verbally, not as fast to type in. So at the little teeny tiny stage, my go-to has been whenever I'm outside during tick season is a really warm shower, hot shower before I go to bed. And I don't sleep with my dog as much as I love her. But is the hot shower, is that a reasonable way, even at that itty bitty tiny stage?
Absolutely. That's actually one of the recommendations because if you kind of scrub your skin with a washcloth, you're more likely to brush off that tick sooner rather than later. If it's already attached, like the washcloth won't help. But if you shower right after you come in, and we'll talk more about those prevention methods, the hot, it's unlikely you'd be able to get the water hot enough to actually kill the tick because it would hurt you. But as long as but as long as you're like scrubbing, and heat does kill ticks, so that's a good instinct. But okay. Any other questions about the life cycle before I move on? Okay. Awesome. Thanks, Deb. It's not working again. That's really strange. There we go. All right. So there's lots of different types of ticks in Iowa, and not all of them have Lyme disease. And in fact, a lot of them don't have Lyme disease. Some of them only carry animal-borne disease or animal diseases. Some of them carry human diseases. Some of them carry both. So it really depends on which tick you get bitten by in order to kind of determine what you might have. So let's go ahead and play a little game because I'm going to teach you how to identify the 4 main ticks here in Iowa, the ones that are clinically relevant to humans, right? So when I say clinically relevant, it means it could make a human sick. The most important tick is the black-legged tick. Why? Because this is the one that carries Lyme disease here in Iowa. It's an Ixodes species. If you want, we can talk all about that. I try to keep it simple because most people, if you say Ixodes, they're going to say what? So you can either call it the black-legged tick or the deer tick. Very, very common in the US, all over the East and the Midwest. It spreads a number of diseases. There's Lyme disease, there's anaplasmosis, there's ehrlichiosis, there's babesiosis, and there's Powassan. Those are the major ones, but there are a couple more that it's suspected to carry. This tick, this is the adult female. The adult male is a little smaller and a little different looking, but the female is the one that's most likely to actually bite you. So this is the tick to look out for. If you get bitten by the tick on the other side of the screen, the Lone Star tick, you don't really have to worry about Lyme. There's a couple other things you have to worry about, though. There's alpha-gal, which is that red meat allergy that's kind of spreading in the Midwest. There's Heartland virus, which is a rare one, but pretty deadly. And there's ehrlichiosis as well. And those are just the major ones. They do, every once in a while we'll find one that carries something that we haven't heard of before, or that, or is unusual that they carry it. But, okay, those are going to be the two main ticks here in Iowa. The most important one, again, is that black-legged tick, the deer tick. That is the one that causes Lyme disease. It will spread Lyme disease. So, all right. And these two, the American dog tick and the brown dog tick, notice how alike the brown dog tick and the black-legged tick look. You've got that kind of brown scoop, and then the scutum has the darker color. Look at that, really similar. Hard to tell the difference. So you might have a brown dog tick even if you have a black-legged tick. All right, but the American dog tick is much easier to recognize because it has kind of that mottled pattern. And that one, you can be sure that it doesn't have Lyme disease. This is mostly, both of these dog ticks carry Rocky Mountain spotted fever, which is a serious disease. It's a lot like Lyme disease. It comes with a rash and kind of those flu-like symptoms, but it's not as common, especially here in Iowa so far. So, all right, I'm going to flip back to that black-legged tick. Take a look. Lone Star tick, it has that dot on it. The female does. The American dog tick has that kind of mottled pattern, and the brown dog tick kind of similar to that black-legged tick. All right, now we're going to go and we're going to do a test. All right, write down which of these ticks is which. So we have the top right, we have the top left, and we have the bottom tick. Which one's which? And if you all want to put it in the chat, feel free. I looked forever to find a picture with all three of them in it.
I was gonna ask, do they hang out? Like,
No, someone actually put those together on the sleeve. No, that was intentional. They were trying to, yeah. Tick party! Interspecies demand. All right. Anybody want to guess? Anybody want to shout out what they think it is? I've got the chat open.
or feel free to come off mute too.
Yeah. Oh, no one's risking.
I'll guess.
Okay.
I'll guess.
Okay.
Black
Do it.
flag
Do
at
it.
the bottom.
Top left is Lone Star. Top right
Top,
is
yes.
dog. And
Yes.
the bottom is deer.
100%. Good job. Yay. That was awesome. Yeah, so now you know how to identify those ticks. Does anybody want, raise your hands if you want me to go back one more time so you can see what the 4 ticks look like. Okay, everybody seems to have captured it.
We
All
got
right.
we got a hand. We got a hand.
We got a hand. Okay, so we have time, so I'm going to go back. All right, oh, come on, guys. Here we go. All right, black-legged tick. It's a little hairy almost, right? And then the Lone Star tick has that lone star, so that one's pretty easy to do. Take a look at the American dog tick again. And then the brown dog tick, which its mouth parts are a little bit different looking. If you kind of take a look at that versus the black-legged tick, which are a little longer mouth parts as opposed to snubber mouth parts.
Yeah, it looks like the brown dog tick has like a little more like I guess blending with its little dark brown part.
Yeah, it's not quite as differentiated, right? And also, if you look around the edge of the tick, there's a body part that kind of like folds over a little. Doesn't seem to be as pronounced. This one seems to be pretty pronounced along its edge. So, but we're gonna work with that. We're gonna work with that. All right. Any questions about the types of ticks before we move on to risky areas?
I guess, are there other species to watch out for?
There are, but most of them cause animal diseases. So they are unlikely to be of consequence to humans, at least at the moment. We're always discovering new things.
Nice.
So, yeah.
And we do have a question in the chat. I think they had to join a little late. So they wanted to clarify whether the ticks are babies or grown when they get to that questing stage.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's it's an important question too, because like at the larva stage, they can quest, but they tend to do so very close to their home and at very low levels. So we're unlikely to be exposed to them as humans. They do quest in the nymph and adult stages on blades of grass, brush, low forest canopy. And it does have to be low, it's not up in the trees. So absolutely, they will quest as nymphs and adults. That's a good question. Okay, anything else going on? All right, let's move on to risky areas. There are riskier areas than others, and it really depends on the tick. So we're going to focus on the Lyme disease tick, but we're going to talk a little bit about everything, right? Ticks are out anytime it is above about 6 degrees Celsius. And if you ask me to translate that to Fahrenheit, I would say it's probably about 45-ish Fahrenheit. So they can come out during the winter. Like if you are in they hide in the brush during the winter. And if you happen to be like moving leaves or walking through the forest or and it's not too snowy, the ticks, and it gets a little warmer, breaks freezing, ticks can come out and start questing. They tend to be adults. The nymphs don't really tolerate cold as well. So they're easier to find. But if you happen to be working with brush, even in the wintertime on a warmer day, they will possibly be out. So ticks tend to really like, though, when it's warm and it's humid, because desiccation or drying out is literally when ticks will just like die. Like it kills them very quickly. So that's why they tend to stick to brushy, like shaded areas, because it tends to be a little more humid, right? Woods are one of the favorite habitats for the deer tick, that black-legged tick that carries Lyme disease. That humid understory really keeps them moist, especially in the mornings. They go out and quest because it's moister. There's still some dew around. It's evaporating, and the shade won't dry them out. The hot sun won't dry them out. The shade allows them to kind of be there longer questing. They tend to like the edges of woods too. So not only in the woods, but the edges as well, because they know that there's going to be more movement of animals. So they'll kind of make their way to the edge. And that also tends to be where we walk, right? Because we don't like to walk through trees that are really thick. So we have a tendency to kind of go just around the edge of the woods, but enjoy the woods, or trails in this case. So do be very, very aware of Lyme disease prevention when you're out in the woods, when there's leaf litter, when there's brush, or you're along the edge of woods. There are several ticks that prefer kind of more brushland, prairie, or tall grass, but it's not really the Lyme disease tick. Several other ticks really like this area, so you can get ticks, but you're unlikely to get Lyme disease in the prairie areas. So if you have a brushy area between your fields, along your fence lines, just do be aware, because you can get other diseases in this area. Okay. All right. Any final questions about where to be aware of ticks? Okay. In that case, we will go ahead. All right. Prevention.
Oh, we got a question. Sorry, in
We
the
got a
chat.
question. Okay.
Are there particular plants that they prefer as hosts? And Jen mentioned that she's heard barberry is one that they tend to gravitate towards.
That is not really something that I see a lot of scientific literature about. And I do try to keep it to the kind of scientific method, the tested, peer-reviewed stuff. I know there's lots of people who have kind of been outside, they've been on their land, and they see that ticks prefer certain things over another. And I say trust that. If you are, you know your land, you're walking in it, you've seen ticks on certain plants more than others. It may be that it's just easier to quest from a thicker stem or a wider leaf. But science, if science doesn't really care about that, then I can't really tell you yes or no. Because ultimately, it's not like if you pulled all the barberry, you would get rid of the ticks, right? The ticks would still be there.
They'll just move.
They'll just move to other things. So,
And we've got another question on what kind of environment do they tend to nest and live in terms of like, I'm thinking like ecosystem probably, or climate.
yeah. So temperate climates are good for them. There's something called like three host ticks, and Lyme disease and most ticks in Iowa are three host ticks, and they have a tendency to have a life cycle over like about 2 to 3 years, depending on, the weather. And as we get kind of warmer winters and we get longer springs, less frost, so there's more frost-free days, they tend to spread northward. Because after about a certain latitude, it gets a little too cold for them. But also the good news is that in some of the hotter places, it's getting too hot for them and they dry out. So 6 of one, half of the other. We happen to live in Iowa. I happen to live in Iowa. Some of you are in the other neighboring states, but we are going to be stuck with ticks for the foreseeable future. It's not going to get hot enough here for a long time, and our winters are going to be getting shorter.
Oh, and Brenda put a comment in the chat that the thought around the barberry is that small animals like mice hide under there. So there's more probability
Oh,
of ticks from them.
brilliant. Okay. So your ticks have a strategy. It's like they're playing chess. Okay. Okay. Prevention. All right. So there is no silver bullet to protect yourself from tick-borne disease. You cannot find one thing that will just work for you every time. Especially because we know that as ticks, different types of ticks move around, they're going to have different preferences. They have different habits. And we do expect kind of more of that alpha-gal tick, the Lone Star tick, to kind of start moving. So preventing that tick versus preventing another tick in a different environment are going to be a little different, right? So I suggest using a lot of these strategies, a host of different strategies to prevent tick-borne disease. And I know that you probably all have kind of seen in your daily lives what works and what doesn't on your land. And again, I say follow that if it really seems to help. But I'm going to talk to you about what I've read in scientific articles right now. So, or what the CDC recommends. That's a big one. And there's a lot of different public health departments that are kind of weighing in on this as well. So, all right. Not everybody loves chemicals, but this is one thing that the CDC recommends. And it is highly effective. All of the studies show that this works. So if you want to treat your clothing and your shoes with something called permethrin, this will repel ticks. It is toxic to humans. And so if you are going to, when wet, only when wet, if you are going to apply it to your clothing, do it outside on a day when it's not too windy, so it doesn't blow back in your face, or at least be downwind of it. Spray it on and then just let it dry. And then don't touch it for several hours until it is completely dry. And then you can wear it about 6 washes every time you go out into a tick risky area. Not everybody wants to be exposed to these chemicals, and you cannot use permethrin on your skin. Do not put it on your skin. You notice she's wearing gloves. So, what we do recommend is the EPA has several approved insecticides. You can go on their website. They have a list of things they've approved. The four big ones for ticks are DEET, picaridin, IR 3535, and oil of lemon eucalyptus. That last one tends to be what people who don't want to put strong chemicals on their skin use. And there's some evidence behind it that it actually confuses the tick sensory system. And so they don't know where they're going. That is if you want to use chemicals when you're in a risky area. Oh, also, if you have grandkids or kids, do not put any of these chemicals on them if they're under 3 years old. It will affect their growing bodies. Chemicals are generally not good for you, but it's always that kind of risk-benefit analysis, right? Like if I go into a tick-infested area and I get lots and lots of ticks, I'm more likely to get Lyme disease, which is a neuroinvasive disease in some cases, and that might be really bad for me. And on the other hand, if I use these chemicals every day in the long term, I might get some sort of cancer. So weigh that risk for yourself. If it's only occasional use, it's unlikely to be debilitating. So again, like you use your best judgment. I will only kind of tell you what science says. So, all right. All right. I hope you all don't mind the picture, but this is what a tick looks like when it's actually embedded already. You can't see its head. Kind of looks like it's missing a head. So, oh, also, which kind of tick is this? Anybody want to proffer a guess?
We got a deer tick in the chat. Yeah, we got a
Yep,
couple.
absolutely. Good job. All right. So I think it was Deb who was talking about showering within 2 hours of returning home from your outdoor activities. That is going to, because it takes the ticks time to latch onto you, and then they have to crawl around your body trying to find a good place to attach. So if you come home and if after being in a risky tick area, you take off your clothing, you put it in the dryer. You run it on high for at least 10 minutes, high heat. Make sure it can get up to that high heat, like your sensor's not broken or anything. And that will actually kill any of the ticks, especially the smaller ones, because remember I said desiccation, dehydration will really affect them. Visually inspect any of your gear. If you have tools or if you have something that's fuzzy or Velcro-y, that something a tick might have easily stuck to, make sure you don't find any ticks on that. And then shower within about 2 hours and kind of scrub your skin with a washcloth. And make sure, we'll talk about tick checks in a minute, but make sure that you're just visually looking at yourself. So, another thing that they are starting to talk about is keeping your immediate home area clear of brush. Like, don't give ticks habitat near where you live. And especially like ticks aren't going to hang out on like gravel driveways or paved walkways. But they might hang out in the bushes that you've planted as a windbreak nearby your house. So, and I'm not saying cut down your bushes, just be a little more aware, right? Like they might actually be in those bushes, especially if there's a lot of leaf litter around. So clear off the bottom underneath the bushes. And then finally, we're going to talk about that visual inspection again. Like it's really important to do this. They say this is one of the more effective ways to prevent tick-borne disease, including Lyme disease. And that's that tick check. So I know none of us really probably enjoy standing in front of a mirror naked, but here we go. It might be important, at least check as you're getting in the shower, places like the inside of your elbows, in and around your ears, in your hair, because that is a place that is harder to find them. So they're likely to escape detection, under the armpits, inside the belly button, around that waist where your pants meet your waist, between your legs and in the back of your knees. Those are all places that blood vessels are close to the skin, and ticks want easy access to blood, right? Like they're looking for something that they can get to easily. And so they do that, and they look for those spots. So just make sure, and if you happen to have any new little freckles, be like, is that a tick or is that a freckle? Because it could theoretically be a very small tick. So look carefully. If you have pets, how many of you have pets? Imagine you'll have dogs, cats. If you're interacting with your pet, you are more likely to be exposed to ticks. There are treatments for both dogs and cats that will help the ticks be pushed or unattracted to them. Please talk to your vet about that. I am not a veterinarian and I do not want to give any sort of medical or vet advice, but there are methods out there that you can prevent ticks in your animals. And they also are very susceptible to any place, tick bite, any place where their veins or their arteries or their blood vessels basically are near their skin. So the eyes, the ears, the tail, underneath the legs, and between the toes, actually. It's not always easy to get your dog to, or your cat especially, to like get between those toes, but do that visually check, make sure that they're not getting fed upon, because they are basically public transit for ticks into your house. And once the tick is in your house, it may feed off of them, drop off, hang out in your house in a wet place for a little bit, and then hop onto you its next blood meal. So, okay. I see there's a lot of questions. Do we want to pause and answer some of these questions before we go to the next?
Sure. So we do have one question on the best way to get a tick off after it's been embedded. So I think that might be coming up.
That's coming up. Yeah.
Okay. And then we've got another question around a cedar side product that in its granular form you can sprinkle around your home. Is that something that you've heard of before and as a way to prevent ticks? I'm assuming it's similar to the flea sprays or something that you can.
Yeah, I have not heard anything about that. And it is not recommended by the CDC, but it doesn't mean it's not recommended, if that makes sense. Like it just, there wasn't enough evidence for the CDC to put it on their website, right?
Yeah.
And I want to make sure that I stick to the CDC website, right? It doesn't mean it wouldn't necessarily work, but I have had people in the last 3 months come up to me and say, Angela, oh my God, the cattle in my farm are just like so smart because they hang out near the cedar trees and it keeps the ticks down. And then like 2 weeks later, I had someone come up to me and say, I keep getting ticks and they're always in my cedar trees. And so, and I don't know if it's like a microenvironment thing, like is it more humid near the cedar trees and there's just no humidity in that person's farm outside of the cedar trees? I have no idea. Like I don't know what the secret is, but like if you notice something about, I mean, your land, your cattle, you probably have been farming on your land for a really long time. Trust your gut. But again, I'm here to provide what science says. So we're going to stick to that.
And then we do have a request for the slides. So if you want to send those to me after, we can PDF them and include them in the follow-up email.
Great.
If you want.
Just FYI, if you would mind attributing the slides to me when you share them or use them, that'd be great. And you'll notice that I used a lot of CDC images in here, and there'll be a couple of links where you can attribute some of those CDC images to the CDC because it's intellectual property, right? They want us to use it because it's helping people learn, like it's educational purposes, but we still have to be careful about that. So yes, I will send the slides.
All right, and we do have somebody who uses clove oil as a deterrent. And then there was somebody who I think they just were asking specifically about prairie dwelling ticks. Like, is there a particular disease that you need to worry about in the prairie setting more than others?
I mean, Rocky Mountain spotted fever more so. Rocky Mountain spotted fever, like I said, is very similar to Lyme in that it has those flu-like symptoms, and it sometimes gives people a rash, but it tends to not be a bullseye rash. So this is what I would suggest. If you're worried about prairies, maybe you're in kind of more the western area, I might try to keep that tick. What I do with mine is I put them in between clear duct tape and I stick them in my freezer. So, and that tends to preserve them pretty well. You can put them in alcohol as well. And so if you happen to get bitten in the prairie and you develop a rash and fever, flu-like symptoms, go to your doctor. You can even show them the tick, and it might help them identify what they should test you for. We'll talk about that in a minute, but like, yes, there are less likely to be Lyme disease ticks in the prairie, but there are still plenty of dog ticks, and there are some alpha-gal ticks. So the Lone Star. Yeah. Okay. Any more questions? All right, we'll move on. Oh my God, you have a tick on you and it's super gross and you see its little head, it's already embedded, and oh my God, get it off of me, gross, gross. Ah, no, don't do that. So when you find a tick and it's already attached, stay calm, crack open that can of calm. I know they're really gross. I've gotten a couple on me, and I do this a lot. So when you find it, isolate it, don't put anything on it. I know a lot of people have said Vaseline, it'll get it to detach. Don't do that. That can actually make the tick, its physiology changes, and it's more likely to give you the diseases it has in its saliva and blood, because it's I don't know if it's cortisol, but like something changes in the tick, and it's more likely to give you the disease. So don't do that. You have, with most diseases, about a 24-hour time period. The tick attaches, and the disease inside of the tick has to transform a little bit in order to actually come into your bloodstream and give you Lyme disease. So you have about 24 hours before that tick really can give you Lyme disease. Some of the other diseases, it only takes about 15 minutes. Powassan, and there's like everything in between too. But so basically the rule of thumb is get that tick off of you as soon as possible, which is why within 2 hours, shower, do the tick check, pull that tick off with its tweezer. That is the absolute best thing you can do. Get that tick as close to the skin as possible. Use fine needled tweezers. Try to get part of its head. You don't want to leave the head into the body, and like kind of adjust it so it goes straight up and then pull out. That is absolutely the best way to get rid of a tick. It doesn't leave the mouth parts in your skin, which can then transmit the disease more. And that way, when you wash it, you're just washing your skin. You're not moving around the mouth parts. So we're gonna like, I would love to be able to practice the all, but it is what it is. So those thin needle tweezers are best. If you don't have thin needles, the thicker ones will work too. Just make sure you kind of grab that head. Grabbing onto the head is the most important thing, and just pulling it right up. That's going to be flat on your skin, right? So you need to get it up and then pull. Right. And that's what that looks like. It's going to be tiny. It'll be hard to kind of maneuver. You might need your thickest glasses. I know I need glasses anymore, so, and it probably will hurt. I'm sorry, but it's better than getting Lyme disease. All right. I get tons of questions about this. Do we have a question before I move on from the prevention?
We did have a note in the chat saying that the tape makes the identification and testing difficult.
Oh, good to know. Thank you. Yeah, we're going to talk about testing in a minute. So the CDC recommends that you don't send the tick you just got off of you to a lab. And there's a couple different reasons for that. One, often the tick arrives damaged because of the heat or the pressure or just bumping around, or it's disintegrated enough that they can't get the DNA or the RNA out of it, which is how diseases are tested in ticks, right? There's a DNA extraction machine that figures out which disease is there. So they often don't, and then it becomes a little more expensive because you have to pack the tick appropriately, and you still can't guarantee that it's not going to be too hot or even too cold in the wintertime. So there is a lab at Iowa State run by Ryan Smith, And ISU will identify the species only. So if you send the tick, they'll have you fill out a form. They'll show you how to pack the tick, but they will just identify which species of tick it is. They don't actually do the testing for diseases. So there is that option available, and it is free. The University of Nebraska will also test the tick for you. However, there is a qualifier to this, and they will test the diseases, and they will get back to you. But by the time that tick gets tested, you may have already developed symptoms, and you don't want to wait to start medical treatment, because if you've got symptoms and you know it's associated with a tick bite, doctor is most likely, I mean, again, I'm not a medical professional, they're most likely going to start you on antibiotics. Because the risk, even before they will test you, but a lot of the time, if you have Lyme disease, it takes a little more than 2 weeks for the antibodies to show up in your bloodstream. So it may come back negative if it's an early test. They're going to probably start you on treatment early anyway, just because the risk of getting Lyme disease or having Lyme disease is higher than taking antibiotics when you don't need them. Again, the medical professional you see will weigh that in a scientific manner. So, and then finally, let's say you send in your tick to UNMC or another, and UNMC will do it for free. There are paid services you can use. Let's say you get a negative result. Is that a false sense of security? Because you may have been bitten by any number of other ticks that also may have been positive, but you didn't catch them and you didn't find them and you didn't notice them. Also, if you get a positive result, that doesn't necessarily mean you have Lyme disease. You might be one of those people who gets exposed to it, develops an antibody, and never gets sick. So again, they actually say maybe not the best thing to do to send a tick to a lab, unless you're wanting to participate in science and you think you found an unusual tick in a place that it shouldn't be. So, and if anybody from UNMC is on this call, I would love for y'all to come up and tell us what you're looking for and when you would like us to send the tick. So.
I don't know if I got
no.
anybody.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Well, any questions about this one? Because this one is one I get all the time. People they're so nervous. They want to send in their tick to see if it has a disease, when realistically you should be worried about if you have disease. So
I guess I've got a question. So instead of having to mail the tick in, because I'll admit I'm really bad at mailing things. Are there places where you can just send a photo if you can take a good high-res
absolutely
image? Yeah.
Yeah. I think the University of Minnesota, I was just looking at their webpage last night. Also, University of Wisconsin-Madison, the Center for, and I'm going to get this wrong, Excellence in Vector-Borne Disease. They both you could take a photo of it and send it in, but it needs to be like a very clear one with lots of light. And someone will help you identify the species of tick. But if it's an adult, you all already know how to identify the 4 species because we just went over that. So yeah, definitely. Like there's definitely things you can do there. University of Wisconsin is kind of the center for tick-borne research and experimental. Brenda, are you from University of Wisconsin? She's giving me a thumbs up.
No, but I'm pretty close. I actually
Okay.
I am a University of Wisconsin Master Gardener
Oh,
and a Master
fabulous.
Gardener. So
Good for you.
yes.
Okay. Yeah, Gardner is another high-risk group, another huge high-risk group. So, okay. All right. All right. All right. All right. All right. When should you go see a doctor? Because I don't know about you, but I don't want to go see a doctor. I don't have time. It's a long way. It's hard to get an appointment. But there are definitely times when you suspect you have Lyme disease, you should absolutely go to the doctor. Do not wait. If you have Lyme disease, the sooner the treatment starts, the less long-term symptoms you are likely to have. So early treatment is good. Bullseye rash. That is the classic Lyme disease rash. It looks different on dark skin compared to light skin. So be sure to be able to recognize it if you or your companions may not have lighter colored skin. It's not in every case of Lyme disease. And every once in a while, a disease named Starry, which is, I can't remember the acronym for it, but it's a fairly rare tick-borne disease, will also have a bullseye rash. So again, go to the doctor, go get tested. You will, if you have Lyme disease and you develop symptoms, it'll be between 1 and 2 weeks after the bite. Some tick-borne diseases can be even as soon as 3 days. That's Rocky Mountain spotted fever. Again, muscle aches, fatigue, headache, chills, fever. You sometimes get a rash that isn't a bullseye rash. That is completely normal for a lot of tick-borne diseases. So if you go to the doctor, they may test kind of like a syndromic kind of thing, which means they test for a bunch of diseases at once, because you might actually have 2 or 3 things. They almost all are the same treatment. So even if they don't know if it's not Lyme or Lyme, again, they will probably start you on an antibiotic. Again, I am not a doctor. Please do not take this to your doctor and say, Angela said I should be on antibiotics. But that is typically the course of things. And I've known people who did have that bullseye rash, went to the doctor prescribed them doxycycline, and then later they got a test saying that they were positive, but it took several weeks. So don't wait to go to the doctor if you have that classic bullseye rash, or if you have these symptoms and they're associated with tick bite. Like, who gets flu in the summer, right? Like, that's another kind of like, oh, it's July and I have the flu. It's kind of unusual. So think about that. Yeah. And here down below, the tick bite guide. That will actually be a great way to kind of sum up that CDC data. So take a look at that for more information. I've only given you a very small part of it here. So, all right. I'm almost done. Mythbusters, y'all ready for this? Oh, we have a question, I think.
Oh, no, I just dropped the link in the chat.
Okay, great. So Mythbusters, this is the part where we talk about common things you hear about ticks or questions you have, and I either try to debunk them or say, I don't know. So the first one I want to start with, just as an example, is hats protect you from tick-borne disease because ticks drop from trees. How many of you have heard that? Yeah, right? Ticks don't actually drop from trees. It's really dry. A lot of the time it's drier up in the canopies. It's a lot of work to get up to the top of a tree when they could just quest from a blade of grass. So most of the time, if you find a tick on your head, it's because they latched on at your pants or your socks, and then they slowly climbed up your body and hung out with your head. So hats don't actually protect you from tick bite. They protect you from things like solar exposure or, sunburn, but certainly not tick bite. Anything else out there? What are the common things you've heard about ticks?
I've heard about people using lighters to get them to let go.
Oh my gosh, no.
But that might
You're
just be
burning
like
yourself.
country guys being,
Yeah.
excuses
I mean,
to use
like,
lighters.
I mean, if you're into burning, okay, whatever. But no, don't use a lighter to take off a tick. That is a bad idea. And it will not really work. Again, it will cause the tick to go into a panic. Its physiology changes and you're more likely to get its tick-borne disease. So just take it off with tweezers. I know it's not as cool looking. I know, right?
We do have a couple questions in the chat. So we've got one around where do ticks go in the wintertime?
Oh, this is a great question. I love this question because I had this question before I started a PhD. I was like, yeah, where do they go? They mostly hang out in forests, right? Or in prairies. And prairies and forests both have this kind of thick layer of brush, like at the bottom, kind of just above the ground, but not so far up. And that ground will actually stay quite warm until later in the winter. And the leaf litter acts as a really good barrier to the cold. So even if it's, say, a little bit higher up, it's freezing a lot of the time you'll still have just kind of a window of, there's no wind, so it's not drying things out. It's not, taking away whatever heat there is. So in the first part of the winter, the ticks are actually very able to survive and still come out questing quite a bit on warmer days because the ground is still warm. It's radiating heat. So it's leaf litter. It's the best way to say it. So if you're raking leaves in the fall, just be aware that you might be picking up a lot of ticks. So
We've got another question. Is it true that only about 50% of black-legged ticks actually have the Lyme disease bacteria?
where and when? It really depends on where you are. It depends on the season. It depends on if you are in an area that has white-footed mice, or if you're in an area where the first host is a salamander instead, because salamanders don't carry Lyme disease. It really depends on a lot. And in fact, that information really isn't available so much in Iowa, not recently anyway, especially it's been about 20 years that the last information from specifically Iowa has been published, which is one of the reasons why we're studying it, because we'd like to kind of update that. So next year, you're going to find me out dragging for ticks and testing for infection. And at that point, I will be able to tell you what percentage of ticks are infected with Lyme disease in Iowa. But until then, we don't know. Yeah.
Nice. All right, we got a couple more questions. Could ticks cause some irritation to your skin, even if they're not transmitting the disease?
About that one, actually. I mean, I suppose if they crawled on a plant that you're allergic to and then crawled on you, I've not heard that one.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't know. That's
Yeah.
an I don't know her.
I would assume being bit by anything might.
Yes, yeah. Like
Next we've
Angela?
got. Oh, go ahead, Brenda.
Angela, it's like mosquitoes. Everybody has a different reaction to that chemical that causes you to not feel the bite and feel them feeding.
Oh, okay. I had
So-
understood that question as someone who didn't get bitten. Did I misunderstand that question? If
Oh,
they're
yeah,
just
no, as
crawling
if
on
they
your
got
skin.
bit, that irritates your
Okay.
skin.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Oh, yeah, that's a fair
All right.
point.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't specify bite.
Yes,
All right.
Brenda, you were right.
Yeah, next we've got if a tick has attached to a deer and transmitted a disease to the deer, following that, can you eat the deer meat, would you get a disease from the meat that you consumed?
Are you cooking the deer meat?
Hopefully.
I mean, deer tartare, I can't imagine that's really a delicacy here in the Midwest. But as far as I have heard, I have not read anything about that. However, if an animal has tick-borne disease and you eat the unpasteurized milk of that animal, it can, in some cases, transmit the tick-borne disease. This happened in France a couple years back. There was a really bad outbreak because people were drinking unpasteurized goat milk, and the goats had tick-borne diseases. So,
Oh, wow. Well, that probably is relevant to this.
yeah.
All right, next we've got, is there any benefit to putting antibiotic ointment on a tick bite when you remove them?
I mean, wound care in general, what do doctors say these days about antibiotic ointments? That is definitely one I think you should okay with your doctor. But the CDC does not recommend it. It's not on their webpage. So I'm going to say that most likely they probably don't think it's that important.
Yeah, but you want to wash it at least.
Yeah, absolutely wash with soap and water, like mild soap and water, nothing really harsh because it might damage the wound even more. So just typical wound care, right?
All right, and Deb's offered to host a tick patrol if you're interested.
Ooh. Dave, where are you?
All right, we've got another question. Are my efforts in creating a habitat for pollinators over the winter, leaving the leaves, actually creating a habitat for ticks?
I mean, not the Lyme disease tick, not the deer tick, right? Because that takes a forest. The answer to that may be maybe, but again, benefits outweighing the risk, right? Like all our bees are dying. So is it more important to have food to eat or to just then, go into your house and make sure you do a tick check when you come back from it? So
All right. And I think, was somebody going to come off mute and ask a question? We've got another one in the chat.
Yeah, I think Deb was.
Okay, go ahead, Deb.
I was simply going to say that Jen and I are in Winneshiek County, a great place for field research on ticks. I'm just being silly and promoting.
Yeah.
But you would be welcome.
No, that's wonderful. We're actually this summer I'm going to learn to drag in about 2 weeks. Or no, actually it's next week now. Oh, that's so exciting. Oh, yay. And nymphing time is about over, so we can't do any of the serious research that involves like actually catching nymphs and trying to see how many of them are infected, right? And that's the important bit. But I am going to go try to drag for adults in some of the counties out in Western Iowa because we don't have any data from that area. So if you're in Western Iowa and you've got a farm and you want me to drag for ticks, like we'll try to make that work. Like let me know. So.
All right, we've got another question. What if you pull the tick out and the head stays in?
Oh, that's not nice, right? Well, first of all, I would try to get that head out as soon as possible because you don't want it to get infected. Second, in that case, if you still can't get it out, I would go to urgent care or some sort of medical clinic for them to get it out. You don't want to destroy yourself trying to, and you at that point, like I don't like you have 24 hours. Hopefully the tick has only been on for a short amount of time. Hopefully you can get it out before it transmits the diseases, and then watch yourself for 2 weeks. Like just be like, do I have flu-like symptoms? Do I have a rash at the tick bite site? Like casually kind of just make sure that you're going to be okay. Like, again, a lot of people get tick-borne diseases, but they don't ever have symptoms. Like we'll test people and they have antibodies for alpha-gal and they don't have trouble eating. They don't go into anaphylaxis. So
I feel like I've heard about people like drawing like a circle around it with like a marker so you can
see if it gets
if
bigger.
it grows. Yeah.
Yeah.
All
They do that
right.
with a lot of stuff, a lot of allergic reactions. So
Yeah. Brenda made the note too on the question about your pollinators, if the leaves are also creating a habitat for mice, is a question to ask yourself. And then Valerie shared topicals would decrease the risk of skin and soft tissue infection from a normal skin flora, such as staph. However, topicals are not specific to Lyme disease or other diseases carried by the ticks. Okay, she got that from. She's a doctor.
Okay, great. I was like, okay, that sounds like a medical professional. Yeah, I don't want to step on any medical professional's toes. So,
all right. I know we're coming up on time, so maybe we can squeeze in one more question if someone's got a burning one. And I guess I've got one too if somebody else doesn't have one.
Okay.
Are most of the diseases you need to worry about bacterial?
A lot of them, yeah.
Okay.
With mosquitoes, are mostly viral, actually. And with ticks, a lot of them are bacterial. Yeah, not all, but yeah.
And I guess to close this out, Kelsey asked, are all of these diseases you can find out with blood work?
Sometimes it's hard to find a lab that will test for these. Now that we have gotten a couple of different cases of some of the less common tick-borne diseases, the tests tend to be available. But again, you'll often get treated before you get a diagnosis. And most of the diseases are treated with a course of antibiotics. So you may never actually know exactly what you had unless you go back and get an antibody test later, which is probably going to be at your own expense. So does it matter exactly what you had as long as you got better?
Yeah.
You have to make that decision. So
great. Well, I would love to thank Angela for joining us. I know this has been a topic that's a lot of people have been excited and interested in. We did record this, so I will go ahead and stop the recording, but we'll be sharing this out to everybody that registered as well.